Welcome to the Dwig America podcast. And now your host, Todd Dwiggins.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're listening. Welcome to episode 8 of the Dwig America podcast. I am your host, Todd Dwiggins, coming to you, well, not live, but for me, it feels it's alive. I'm alive right now. Anyway, I always thought that was an odd saying, coming to you live. But anyway, coming to you from the beautiful Dwig America studios here in lovely Central Texas. It's a beautiful sunny fall day here and enjoying it because we have clouds and rain coming up for the next week. So I'm going to soak it in and enjoy it while we got it. On today's podcast, I'm going to update you on the play that I talked about in episode 6 that I auditioned for, overcoming a fear of, I don't know what the fear of, but anyway, probably embarrassment. So update on that. Talk a little bit, some memories of Indiana, and going to you for psychological counseling for an issue. And believe me, it's nothing serious. It's more of a humorous nature. And we have a change of email address for the podcast, so we'll get to that. So first of all, an update on the play. So like I said, I auditioned for it and waited to hear, and so we finally heard back. So I auditioned for it. My daughter auditioned for it. I have 2 parts. I am the ghost of Christmas Yet to Come, which means I don't really have any lines. I basically wear a black hooded cape. You don't see my face. I'm completely hidden. And if you know the Christmas Carol, I just go and intimidate Ebenezer Scrooge and fill him with terror for what the future holds. And hopefully he changes his ways. And I play a second part where I am the poulterer, which means I'm the guy that brings the Christmas turkey that Scrooge is going to have delivered to the Cratchit house. And again, no lines. So I can memorize that and no problem. So actually it's kind of a relief because it's a good way to break me into this. And hopefully maybe someday I'll get a line of dialogue. But that's not really what I'm worried about. It's just the fact I'm doing it. So as we go on, I'll talk about the process because I was always interested in what was the process of creating a play. So the first thing we did after we got our parts is we met together as a cast and we introduced, this is who I am, and this is my part. And then we read through the entire play for a first run. So very interesting. It was easy for me. I just stood around and pointed at my appointed time. And so that means I know my lines perfectly. What was interesting is my daughter, who is, she was cast as, I think, Caroline. So she's someone that her and her husband owe a debt to Scrooge. And they're basically in the future saying how grateful they are basically that they're dead, that Scrooge is dead. They don't say his name per se, but Scrooge is watching, and that's who they're referring to. Anyway, she got that line, but the director, as she read through in the read-through, thought she did such a nice job, she asked her to be a backup for the character of Belle, who in the past is Scrooge's love interest. So very interesting. We'll see how that goes. So very proud of her for doing such a good job on that. So as that process comes through, I'll talk about it just because maybe there's someone else that's never done a play or been interested, see how the workings of a play and creating a play go. So we'll talk about that in the future. So a lot of people I know have concerns, not concerns, but are wondering like, boy, have I really abandoned my Midwest roots living here in Texas, because I really, really do love Texas. I really enjoy it. I really love the weather here, and the people here are friendly, and I love it. I love Texas. I'm not going to say I don't. So there's been some worries, like, in a sense, am I turning my back on my Midwest roots, my Indiana, my Wisconsin roots? And so just so you know that I still have good feelings and still positive memories of growing up in the Midwest and in Indiana particularly, I was going to talk a little bit about some of my favorite memories growing up in Indiana. And one is my father was an Indiana State Trooper. So back in the day, we could ride along with him sometimes when he was working, which was fun. And along with that, my dad, once a year, for me, was from 1979 to 1984. My dad was able to take my brother and sister and I to the Indianapolis 500 when he would work. So he would work at a pedestrian gate. Now, this gate was located on a very busy road that went right alongside the track. But during the day before the race and race day, this road was completely shut off to automobile traffic, and it was just a pedestrian street that was packed with people. So the day before the race, Saturday night, the race was on a Sunday, on Memorial Day weekend, we would go down at midnight with my dad, and we would drive very slowly through the crowd to his gate. And then once we were there, we would basically be set free to wander around the track area before the gates opened to the public. So we would go up and down the stairs in the stands and look around and take a seat. And we would sit up there till I think it was 5 a.m. We would find ourselves in the stands at 5 a.m. And there would be this cannon that would go off, and that was the signal to open the gates. So it was always fun to watch them set this cannon off, hear this boom, and then watch traffic start, all the headlights and the cars and things pull into the track, and just watch the track fill. And that was always one of my favorite memories. So we were there from midnight. The race started at 11 a.m., I believe, and is usually over by about 2:33 in the afternoon. And then by the time my dad was done doing his duty, it was about 5:36 p.m. And then we would get home about 7 or 8 o'clock at night. Long day, and I don't ever remember being really, really tired. I do remember they did take a picture of me completely conked out asleep in the back of my dad's police car at one point. But basically, I don't remember ever being really tired. I just remember how much fun we had. And I can guarantee they don't let you do that anymore. I'm sure people, like state troopers, aren't allowed to bring their family, their kids, along with them to the race. Anyway, but that was a cool memory that I remember growing up in Indiana, one of my favorite ones. The month of May, Indianapolis, was always just a cool time to be there for the Indy 500 and all the festivities that went around that. In fact, it was such a big deal. My friends and I would always, whether we were on bikes or whatever, we would pretend that we were, in the Indy 500 on our bikes. We'd go in circles around the block over and over, pretending we were racing. As I got older, I got a moped, and my friends and I would race our mopeds around the high school and time each other to see who could go the fastest. And that actually brings me to my next point, which I was talking about at the beginning, about a psychological question I have. So here's the deal. If I see someone fall, take a fall, trip, whatever, fall downstairs, it doesn't matter. Almost universally, unless I see they're seriously hurt, if I think they're okay, I will laugh hysterically. I cannot control it. I will laugh hard if I see someone take a fall. But if I accidentally hurt someone, like anyway, I'll talk about an example of that. If I accidentally hurt someone, I will feel physically ill, almost start crying myself. It upsets me if I hurt someone, even if it's a small thing. It just really upsets me. So for an example of someone falling, and I was talking about doing the Indy 500 thing as a kid and pretending to be in the Indy 500. So my friends and I would go with our mopeds to the high school, and we would, like I said, go around the high school and time each other on our mopeds who was going fastest. And we would bring little tools with us because the vibration of the mopeds maybe loosened some of the screws on the moped, so we would tighten them up occasionally. So one time after doing this, my friend was about to go out, and he's tightening up his moped and little areas on his moped. And anyway, he's about to go out, and I turn around, and I have my back to him, and he gets on his moped, and within a split second, I hear a crash, and I turn around, and he's on the ground, and he'd crashed his moped, and he'd gone like 3 feet. He was barely going 2 miles an hour. I mean, he barely went anywhere, and he biffed it, and I think he broke the tail light on it and such. Anyway, the first thought that hit me is like, how do you crash that quickly? What had happened is he had tightened a nut, I think, on the steering column of the handlebars, and somehow when he took off, when he went to turn it, he'd turned it too tight, and so it locked his handlebars, and so he couldn't steer, and it made him crash. But I didn't know that. I was just turned around and see him crash real quickly, and it just struck me as funny, and I could not stop laughing, which made him very angry, which is like fuel to the fire for me. It just makes me laugh harder, and inside I kind of feel bad, like I shouldn't be laughing, and it's really upsetting, and it would really upset me if it was vice versa. But man, it just really makes me laugh hard. And so obviously my friend thinks I'm a complete jerkwad for laughing at him. Now, on the other hand, the other day, or a few weeks ago, we went grocery shopping, and we're pulling all the groceries out of the back of the old minivan. Everything's out. I'm starting to shut the back of the minivan trunk when my wife sees something in the trunk. She decides she wants to grab it. It's not groceries. It's like I think it was a bag or something. And she sticks her head back in there, and I shut the thing and pop her right on top of the head. And she's like, I hurt her. And I felt physically sick. And she's like, it's okay. Just, give me a little bit of a headache. I'll take some, Tylenol or something. But it didn't matter. I physically feel ill whenever I accidentally hurt someone, even if they're like, it's okay. Oh, it's the worst feeling. It's the exact opposite of laughing when someone takes a fall. It just really is upsetting to me. And I was trying to figure out psychologically, like, what's the deal there? Why is it like such opposite extremes? There's not like a middle road balance. It's like either laughing hysterically when someone falls and biffs it and hurts themselves, or physically being ill or starting to cry if I accidentally hurt someone, even if they're okay. So it's just a weird thing to think about, and whatever. So I'm throwing it out there just to see if there's anyone else that has the same issue, at least with laughing hard when someone takes a fall. And finally, today, I've changed the email for the Dwig America podcast just because the Dwigomaniac was way too long and probably too difficult for someone to try to figure out. So if you want to get a hold of the Dwig America podcast, just email dwigamerica@gmail.com. Pretty easy. So it's the same name as the podcast, dwigamerica@gmail.com. Questions, comments, complaints, compliments, whatever, we'll take it. So that's it for today's podcast. Thank you so much for listening and sharing or whatever to get the word out on this podcast. It's still very small, very limited listening group, but I appreciate those that are listening and giving me positive feedback. So until next time, thanks again for listening, and so long, everybody.